Hi everyone, my name is Mr. Suku Thomas Samuel. In today's video tutorial, we will be running through an introduction to business analytics. Let's start off by looking at the definition of business analytics. What is business analytics? Business analytics is the practice of using data, applying a statistical method, developing models so that organizations can go about taking decisions. Does that mean that organizations cannot take decisions without analytics? Well, not quite so. Organizations do take decisions. But in order to refine the quality of the decisions taken, in order to make sure that we are taking the right decision, business analytics will help the senior leadership of an organization to make sure that they're heading out in the right direction. So, how does an organization go about doing this? Well, the organization collects data from the various touch points, the various interactions with their customers about their products and services. With the help of this data, they will go about generating different types of insights. With the help of these insights, the organization will go about improving their products and services. So before we move on, let's try and understand the flow of data in an organization. So for us to understand this better, we need to look at what is called as the DIKW pyramid. So what does DIKW pyramid stand for? It stands for data, information, knowledge, wisdom. So in any organization, this is the sequence with which data will always flow. At the grassroots level, we will always have data that gets collected. So what is data? Data is raw information. The moment this data gets collected, when you arrange that in a sequence, the data becomes information. When you utilize information to take decisions, then it becomes knowledge. Well, when you apply knowledge with years of experience together, then knowledge is becoming wisdom. So this is called as the DIKW pyramid, and this is how information always flows in an organization. For us to understand the DIKW pyramid, let's try and apply that with an analogy of Lego bricks. If you have a bunch of Lego bricks with you and you have that scattered all around you, you would have different types of bricks, different sizes, different colors, just scattered randomly in front of you. That is how data would be. Now imagine you pick up these bricks one by one. You arrange them in a sequence based on color, based on the type, based on the nature. Then what you have done is you have just created out of the data, you've just created information. So just like how beautiful that Lego sequence turns out to be, that is how information becomes. When you start using the different Lego bricks and then you end up taking decisions, what you have done over there is that you've just created knowledge. So just like the picture that I've displayed here for you, we've used different types of Lego bricks, we've used different combinations of colors, and what we've done is we've created a building structure. Now, over the period of time, what you could do is, with your years of experience, you could go about refining the quality of decisions that you're taking. So with experience, what you're doing is you're just creating wisdom. So just like what I've done in the image here for you, if you notice right on top at the pinnacle of the building, we've just done a minor alteration so that it looks aesthetically better. This is how you would end up creating wisdom in your organizations. Okay, now let's try and understand the process of business analytics in an organization. How does an organization drive analytics in their processes? So it starts off by collecting data. Organizations would have different touch points. They would have different avenues of interactions with their customers, and they could use different methodology, different techniques to collect information. So probably they could have some kind of surveys rolled out, or they may have point of sale. They would be generating some kind of receipts over there. So all this information could be pooled together, and this would act as sources of information for you to take decisions. Once you get all this information together, what you would do is you would start processing, you would start segregating, you would start grouping, you would try and see if there's something that you could get out of this. When you start applying some statistical methodology, when you start applying some statistical technique, what you're doing unknowingly is that you are generating insights regarding how customers are interacting with your products or services. And once you have the insights available, the management can utilize this to take decisions. So you have collected data, you have arranged that in a sequence, and then based on that sequence, you've got some insight. Based on that insight, you have taken a decision. So this is how it works out in an organization. Now let's try and understand an analogy with the automobile manufacturers. Let's pick up the case of Maruti Suzuki. Maruti Suzuki may have number of models, but if you'd have observed, for every model they would have different colors. But do you know which color sells the most? The color that sells the most is white. So it doesn't make sense for Maruti Suzuki as a company to go about manufacturing equal proportions of all the colors, because their cars will never sell. So what they would do is they would allocate a higher proportion of manufacturing capacity for white color and lesser proportion for the other colors. So what the organization unknowingly has done over here is they have used business analytics in taking a decision. Now let's try and understand what are the different types of business analytics that we can. Predominantly, we have 5 types of business analytics. They are descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, cognitive. Now let's try and understand each of these one by one. When you collect data, and with this data, you're just trying to summarize and you're just trying to describe the data, what you have done is descriptive analytics. You have collected the total sales for your entire year and you have just analyzing to see how much is your average sale. What you have done is you have applied descriptive analytics. But imagine something goes wrong in your organization. Something did not work out the way it was intended to work out. So in those cases, you're trying to understand what is the root cause for your problem. What you're doing is diagnostic analytics. You're trying to understand what went wrong and you're trying to give reasons, you're trying to give justifications to the different occurrences. What you're doing is diagnostic analytics. The next is predictive analytics. In predictive analytics, what happens is with the help of the past data, you're trying to make a forecast for the future. You have last 10 years of sales data with you. You're trying to figure out how will your sales turn out to be in the 11th year. So what you've just done over here is you have applied predictive analytics. Now, predictive analytics is fantastic in terms of helping you explain how the future would turn out to be. But once you know what the future is, you may need to take some corrective measures. So this is the place where prescriptive analytics would come into picture. So with the help of prescriptive analytics, what would happen is that you would forecast, and with that forecast, you are also taking corrective measures. So for example, 10 years of data, you have forecasted how will your sales turn out to be in the 11th year. But with that, you need to know how much of salesmen do you need. You need to know how much of showrooms you need to cater to that kind of a volume. So what you've just done over here is you have taken prescriptive analytics. Now today we are living in an era of AI. We have machine learning, we have artificial intelligence. So when you end up applying artificial intelligence to your analytics, what you have developed is cognitive analytics. So best example would be sometimes when it rains, you try and place an order on Swiggy, you would notice that there is something which is called as a surcharge that might feature up. Why is the company doing this? The company's figured out that there might be a delay for the delivery boy to reach your home, so they don't want you to end up waiting unnecessarily. Maybe to discourage you from placing an order, the system has evaluated the weather feed. Based on that, they have taken a decision. Let's try and summarize what we have learned in this video. We started off by understanding the definition of business analytics. We've discussed the DIKW pyramid. We saw that in an organization, data becomes information, information becomes knowledge, and then finally club that with experience, you have created wisdom. We've also spoken about the 4 stages or the 4 processes of business analytics. We ran through the number of steps, and finally, we saw there are 5 types of analytics, that is descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, and cognitive. I hope all of you enjoyed watching this video. Stay tuned to this channel for more updates regarding our JRISE repository.